The American President, Joe Biden, has approved a major oil and gas drilling project in Alaska that faced strong opposition from environmental activists. The company behind the Willow project, ConocoPhillips, says it will create local investment and thousands of jobs. Opponents argue it should be halted over its climate and wildlife impacts. Located on Alaska's remote North Slope, it is the largest oil project in the region for decades, and it is expected to produce up to 180,000 barrels of oil a day. Well, let's speak to Esme Stallard, who is our environment correspondent. She's been following the story. It's interesting this because there are two sides to this story. On the one hand, he's just imposed limits on oil and gas drilling on about 16 million acres of Alaska. And on the other hand, he's just given the green light to one of the biggest oil projects in the country in decades. How does this help him meet his net zero targets?
Yeah, it seems a bit conflicting, doesn't it? I mean, the agreement to go forward with the Willow project did put some limits on the initial proposal. So ConocoPhillips wanted to have 5 drilling sites. The Bureau for Land Management, which agreed the go-ahead for the project, has agreed to scale down that slightly to 3 drilling pads. But environmental activists have said this will produce many millions of tons of CO2, which could hinder the ability of America to meet its climate targets. But Biden and his administration have said that this smaller scale down version, and also the fact that there will be measures put in place to capture some of the carbon, means that they can still meet their intermediate climate targets.
Yes, the equivalent of putting an extra 2 million cars on the road, according to some estimates. He will be accused, of course, of bowing to the oil and gas lobby, but then he is under pressure in a cost of living crisis to keep down prices at the pump.
Exactly. He's very much concerned with the rising cost of fuel, and he's hoping that by securing some of this oil more locally within the US, it will help to secure that energy supply and keep costs down. There's also a question around local revenue for people in Alaska. There's real issues around employment and job opportunity there, and they're heavily reliant on the oil and gas sector. Some 85% of their revenue locally sometimes can come from this sector. And across the board, both Republican and Democrat representatives locally had been pushing Biden to agree the project.
It is interesting, as you say, that the congressional group, Alaska's congressional group, and a number of the Alaskan native tribes do see this as an important source of revenue. Of course, it's geographically, it's very isolated. There isn't much work, not much income there.
Exactly. So there's the local Native Alaskans are known as the Inupiat. Some of them are very supportive of it. So we have local mayors from Wainwright and others who have spoken to us and said this will bring needed revenue, needed jobs for local people, while still enabling them to maintain their way of life. But there's also been locals from the nearby town of New Wixit, which is the most locally central town to this new development, who have said they're seriously concerned about it disrupting their way of life, about disrupting the migration patterns of some local animals and affecting their whaling season. So it's not straightforward locally by any means. And actually, we've been told today that they are considering direct action, those local Alaskan natives that aren't in support of the project.
Esme Stallard, thank you very much for that. Thank you.